Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Class is in session for another live episode of Mock It Like It's Hot, presented to you by Club Fantasy FFL. I'm one of your hosts, Evan. Of course, alongside me, as usual, is my buddy, Ryan. Ryan, good morning to you. Happy Monday. How's it going, my man?
It's always a happy Monday. It's funny. Caitlin said the exact same thing to me when we got in here. If I'm mock drafting, it is a great Monday. It's great weather here in New York. I'm actually just having a great day all in all. So yes, very happy Monday.
It's a great day for like Tampa area sports. I mean, the Lightning are on the verge of sweeping the Panthers, so it's good. It's good hockey.
There you go.
It's going along around here. So today's a little bit different. We've been doing rookie drafts the past month or so. We've been doing dynasty drafts with a lot of analysts and people that are in the fantasy community, but we're doing something different today. With us is a two-time fantasy champion. Coming with us on the show today for a mock draft is Caitlin. Caitlin, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Morning.
How are you?
How's everyone? Good?
Good. So before we start the draft, you're a two-time. Is this a two-time like back-to-back champion, or you like champion then lost then champion again?
First to worst to first.
Oh, wow!
Yeah. So my first win was my first year in the fantasy football community that I was in. My second year, I lost and I got last place. A lot of injuries. Don't want to talk about it. I resurfaced and won the whole thing again. So it was pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, congratulations from going worst to first. So you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention, as they would say from Leonardo DiCaprio. So, Ryan, before we get into the draft, tell us, what kind of draft are we getting into today?
Well, if you want to talk about just going completely off the wall, not only
let's do it.
Are we one of the first shows to have a and I use this term loosely, and I'm not saying Caitlin isn't an expert, but a non-Twitter expert on the show. We all are self-appointed experts, and it's a term I hate to begin with, but I think Caitlin's going to be the best of the bunch anyway. But more importantly, we went really wacky with the draft. So we jumped it up to 12 teams, but not only did we jump it up to 12 teams, we're going non-PPR. We're going standard. We're going kickers. We're going defenses. This is your granddad's fantasy football league, and I absolutely love it. We're going to talk more about this later in the show, but I love all different types of scoring formats because I feel like I can get an edge depending on what the scoring format is as long as I do my homework, and I've done my homework, and I know Caitlin hasn't, so I feel like I'm going to crush her in this draft. I'm looking forward to it. So.
We'll see what happens.
All right, let's get it going.
And I do want to point out, we've almost filled the entire draft up. Thank you for everybody for tuning in on 11 on a Monday morning. Looks like we're only going to have one auto draft, and the draft is officially on the books with our buddy, Nate Markham from Fantasy and Frames with the 101. He is not in the room yet. First pick, sometimes they don't get the notification, so this is almost always an auto pick.
Ryan, let's get the draft board up there.
Oh, yeah, that would probably be a great idea.
Probably a good thing this morning as well.
That's why I keep you around, buddy.
So Caitlin, kind of go through kind of your fantasy football story. How did you get into playing fantasy football? Like, what kind of got you into the whole playing fantasy?
So I started playing fantasy football probably a few years ago. I had worked at a bar, and the bar that I worked at the time, they have two fantasy football leagues. So they have an employee league, and then they have an employee / like regular league. The employee league is like a $50 buy-in. The non-employee league is a $100 buy-in.
Sorry.
So, no, you're fine. And so I just one day said, is there an opening? And so I got on, and I've been there I think I've been in there for 5 years now.
5 years. And you're a two-time champion within that 5 years. That's pretty impressive for only being in the league. Kind of like still in the beginning infancy mode of being in a fantasy football. I congratulate you for being a two-time fantasy champion. It's actually pretty hard to do sometimes. Especially being a beginner. Well, that's awesome.
We also 12-team league as well. So
okay,
just a 12 team.
I told the sob story of my home league that it took me until year 15 to win my first championship. So I am just
Ryan, at least
with jealous rage.
So. At least you won one. There's some people who have been in fantasy that have never won one, have been in it forever.
Absolutely.
So Caitlin, when you first got into the league, did you kind of know how to play fantasy football a little bit? Did you kind of like know? I'm sure you knew people that played already. Did you kind of had an idea of like how to draft teams, how to scout out players going into it, or you just were kind of going into it fresh? I'm going to learn as I go.
So I'm familiar with sports, obviously. Love football, baseball, basketball. So I knew obviously it's football. So I've always been a fan of players versus teams. So I feel like that kind of helped me in a way that, I watch college. So I watch them, kind of evolve from college to pro. And, you just kind of pick your favorites and that's where you go.
Okay, I like that strategy. Go with the players instead of the teams. That's good.
That's precisely how my fandom kind of started. I was a huge Syracuse football Donovan McNabb guy, followed him to the Eagles, named my son Donovan. It's a very story that touches me. I understand it completely. So yeah, you follow these guys around and you just kind of feel attached to them. So.
Yeah.
So Caitlin, that first year you were in the league, what was the format of that league? What was the format of it? Was it 12-man? Was it PPR? Was it standard?
Standard.
Standard league. Okay, gotcha. And do you remember your first roster that first year? No? Okay. Most people don't. I don't.
I couldn't find it, but I couldn't find it.
I remember the first time I played fantasy, it was a Yahoo League. This was way back in 2000 and maybe 2006. I was in college, fell into playing fantasy. It was a team it was IDP, so we had individual defensive players. And I don't remember really anybody else on my team, but just picking Sean Merriman as one of my defensive players. And at the time, Sean Merriman was on the Chargers. He was hot. He was one of the best linebackers in the league. So that was the only guy I remember being on my team. Other than that, I have no idea who was on my team. I know year 2 and year 3, I know I picked up Randy Moss and Tom Brady, and that worked out in my favor pretty well. So Caitlin, kind of get me, kind of go through your process pre-draft, especially when the summer months are hitting. We're going through July, OTAs are happening. You got rookie camp, and then we're headed into August where it's now drafts are starting to happen. More mocks are coming about. Are you doing mocks maybe once a week? Are you mocking heavily? Are you even mocking at all when it comes to before your actual draft? What is your plan and strategy?
I don't mock at all.
Wow. Okay.
I just go in and the night before my draft, we always draft on a Sunday afternoon, and we always draft at the bar that we are affiliated with. And I print out a sheet, and that's where I go. So, if you draft, so the way it works, obviously you have the board, you draft, you have the same amount of time. If I were to draft somebody that has already been drafted, this is where it gets fun. Since we are at a bar, we have to,
Yes.
So if I that has already been drafted. So like if I tried to draft Jamar Chase, for instance, because he's already off the board, I would have to take what is called a cement mixer.
Ooh.
For those of you who don't know what a cement mixer is, that is Bailey's.
It's gross.
You have to swish it around in your mouth for 30 seconds to let it congeal. Nope, I'm good.
I mean, you know what? I think most bars maybe do this when they do their fantasy drafts, because the fantasy draft location I do my drafts at is at Rafferty's Bar and Grill, which is down here in Sarasota, Florida. And that's kind of the same deal. If somebody is drafted and then is trying to draft again, that person takes a dirty shot, and that choice is from the owner himself, Carl. Shameless plug to Rafferty's, by the way. Great place to go to if you're down in the Sarasota area. Make sure to go down to Rafferty's Bar and Grill. Best place to do fantasy drafts overall. But yeah, Carl will not only do cement mixer shots, but he'll do like warm gin, warm tequila. We're talking about like bottom of the barrel vodka, like that sort of thing, where you want to make sure you pay attention to the draft board, because if you don't, you're going to probably take one of the worst things ever to be put down your gullet at all. And I know Chip. I know Chip Settle. And Chip, yeah, he got a little bit toasty one draft, and he had to take about 3 shots for picking the same player a few times. So yeah, that was a fun afternoon at Rafferty's. But yeah, I love having location drafts, because it just brings everybody together. You have a great time, and I know my fantasy football league, we're probably going to go down to Key West this year for our fantasy draft. We tried to do it pre-COVID, and COVID screwed everything up. So now we're going to try and go down to Key West for our fantasy football draft. So yeah, it's a fun time doing those types of things, especially with people picking the same player and then taking dirty shots, and then their whole mind frame is all messed up.
Yeah, I was
going
going to
into
say
later rounds. Yeah.
it puts you in such a position to continue to do it over and over again. Like you're set up for failure at that point.
Especially in the later rounds when everybody's just kind of, alcohol's flowing and then they're starting to pick players that have already been picked in the first couple rounds, or they're like picking defenses in like round 5 or 6, which has happened before in a couple of drafts I've been in. So, Caitlin, so you don't do mocks. Do you have a draft strategy going into it like the night before? I know you say you get a draft sheet and you're ready to go. Do you have any sort of players that you really target going into your draft, or are you just kind of doing best available when your pick is coming up?
So I think it's best available. I'm a homer, so I'm a dog. 2022 national teams, whatever.
There you go.
So I'm a homer for that. I like to have a dog or two on my roster. I will say my first year, I remember my first pick, but that is all I remember. Todd Gurley led me all the way through to my very, very fun. And then Tom Brady led me all the way through my last championship. So
what a sad I wouldn't say sad tale, but what if like a fall from grace Todd Gurley?
I know.
Like was the number 1 running back in all of fantasy for a lot of years running, and now he's just sitting on his couch waiting for somebody to call him. What a way, like how the league works when it comes to star players. I mean, especially if they're being run into the dirt like he was over in LA for the longest time, and now he's just sitting on his couch just going what may have been, going into the years of his career. So let's go through a couple of these rounds. Any picks that stand out to you, Ryan? Any picks that maybe stand out to you, Kate, as we're going through round 3 right now?
Well, Austin took Mike Evans from me, and I'm not very happy. No, I mean, so far everybody seems to be. I love the Josh Allen pick for quarterback. I think that's gonna, obviously the way that I draft. I don't know that I'd take a quarterback super early, but if that's your strategy, hopefully it'll work out for you.
Ryan, yes, that is a great comment by Austin in the comments. Why did you take CMC and then Saquon?
Because I have 2 guys with potential to be the RB1, one at the 8th pick of the first round. The CMC hate is out of control. I don't know the numbers on standard off the top of my head, but I think in the games he had played the full game last year, Christian McCaffrey in PPR was averaging like 22, 23 points per game. Those are quarterback numbers from your running back. He should have not fallen to 8. I actually have no issue with Caitlin taking Cooper Kupp at the 104. I don't understand Dalvin Cook over CMC. I certainly don't understand Jamar Chase over CMC unless you're expecting a large jump up in that offense. I understand Jamar Chase can win you some weeks. CMC can win you every week. Najee Harris, I'm kind of on the fence about because I just don't know how much that offense is going to improve. I think the reason CMC fell, and this is something we talked about a little bit before the draft, is pass catching backs are looked down upon in standard non-PPR scoring. They shouldn't be. All you care about is yards, and Christian McCaffrey does a hell of a lot more with the passes he catches than the carries he handles. He could be a 2,000 yard back if he plays the entire season, and that's going to play out very well. Saquon, I'm actually not a big Saquon guy, but when he falls that far into the 3rd round, my options there were Saquon Barkley, James Conner, David Montgomery, Antonio Gibson, basically the 4 backs that went right after there. I'm going to gamble on RB1 upside, and that's why I went with Saquon Barkley.
I mean, aren't you a little bit worried about the injuries with CMC? I mean,
you have to be, but I am a proponent of everybody has an injury risk. True. And so it takes one play for someone to go ahead and get hurt. And it could happen to really any of these guys. We saw it with Derrick Henry last year. You rode that for 8 weeks, and then you were crying if you weren't well prepared for the following 8 weeks. So I'm going to take the talent. I understand minimizing risk. Outside of Jonathan Taylor, maybe Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson, I don't know that there is minimized risk in the first round, even with Travis Kelce, because we expect that he's going to see 2,000, 3,000 targets this season with no Tyreek Hill. But there's no guarantee in that, and there's no guarantee he doesn't start seeing weird coverages as the only viable number 1 on that team.
Now, Caitlin, I noticed that you picked Alvin Kamara. Kamara is a kind of a question mark right now because of his off-the-field issue this past fall. Are you concerned at all if he's probably may get suspended by the league, maybe because we haven't heard really anything since his arrest about what's going on in his whole situation, just like the Deshaun Watson case where we haven't really heard anything at all. Aren't you a little concerned by taking Kamara a little bit too high because of the off-field issues, or are you just going to run with it no matter what?
I think I'm just going to run with it. I love being able to possibly have him, they may do nothing about it. They may do something.
True.
You don't know what's going to happen. I take it and I run the risk of him being suspended for 4 weeks, him being suspended, but he will come back. So I think once he does come back, if he is suspended, I think that he will have something to prove. The entire league and to the entire, I would say, country, as far as the New Orleans offense and just being there. So I think that I'm running a little bit of a risk, but I definitely feel like I will see the positives from that in the end.
Okay, hey, that is a great explanation for it.
It's
I like
perfect.
That's perfect.
I wanted to go back on something Caitlin brought up a little earlier, though. Josh Allen at the 201. So I'm going to talk about, and it's actually two of our guys, Joel and Austin. Austin's going to be on the show next week. 2 quarterbacks in the second round. I normally am just like Caitlin, would not touch it. However, on Joel's positive side, he is on the turn, and the turn I will always say is get your guy territory. If he wants Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is my QB1 for the upcoming season, you have to take him there because he's not going to make it. We just saw Justin Herbert go in the 4th round. He's not going to make it back around to you more than likely. Austin on the other end, if you want Patrick Mahomes, I don't have the biggest issue there because he's kind of right on that roundabout. I would have waited until my Mike Evans pick. I don't think you can expect people to go quarterback at 211, 212, 31, 32, and I think he would have made it back to you on the Mike Evans pick. You could have, I don't know if you value A.J. Brown or CeeDee Lamb ahead of Mike Evans, but you could have gotten Brown or Lamb and then added Mahomes in the 3rd round. So that's where the kind of strategy comes in. If you're on the absolute end, get your guy. I don't worry about it. I love the Kelsey Allen combo. But for Austin, I think he could have gambled and let it come around a little bit. And choosing when you're going to take quarterback is about the hardest thing to do in fantasy redraft. So
5th round.
What's that?
And I just did in the 5th round.
Yep.
Second.
And that's when I'll start looking at the elite guys. The 5th round, I even, when I do my rankings for football guys, I make sure my number 1 quarterback falls in around 50 to 60 because I want him to be a 5th round pick when I'm doing my rankings. That's when I would start to look for the elite guys. But hey, Austin said he 100% would have skipped AJ Brown and Lamb to grab Mike Evans in the comments. So he got his guy. Again, I never fault anybody for get your guy. Mike Evans in a standard non-PPR league, we know he's got 1,000 yards. You can go ahead and bank those 100 fantasy points right there and then just start counting the touchdowns.
I'm going to propose this question to both of you. Now, the importance of what position player now this is opinion based. To you, what is the best position based person to draft in this type of standard league? Now, of course, PPR is way different on the values of what position players. What do you guys value the most in standard leagues? Is it running backs more or is it wide receivers more?
I'm a wide receiver girl.
Okay.
I say she grabbed Cooper Kupp in round 1.
She did.
I was going to be very interested to hear how she answered this question. So.
But I guess it also just depends on. So it depends on where you are in the draft. So that's part of your strategy alone. So it depends on where you are. It depends on who was taken before you. Like who was taken before it got to be your turn. So if my number 1 pick was taken, then I have to completely revamp and say, well, shit, like I have to find somebody else. And so I just I see who's been taken before, I see what's best available, and I see, I kind of have an idea of where I'm going to go with my team. So you just kind of have to run it from there.
Okay. I like that answer. What about you, Ryan?
I say, I don't know that Caitlin and I could be any more different because I am running backs, and my draft tells the same story. I prioritize an elite tight end over just about everything, but I could not echo what she said more about it, especially in the 1st round. It's about where you're picking. I picked the 8th slot 100% on purpose because I wanted to see if I was going to have the courage to take a wide receiver. I did not expect Christian McCaffrey or even Austin Eckler to be there for me. And those are the 2 running backs I have very high. I have McCaffrey at 2, Eckler at 3. So I didn't expect those guys to be there. And I wanted to know under the gun, was I going to be able to take a wide receiver? I guess we'll never know, because 3 went before I ever had a chance and my running backs fell to me. So it worked out perfectly. But like I said, I prioritize getting an elite tight end. And it's way harder if you're in the like first 3 picks of the round, because you have to make a choice on when do you grab the last elite tight end and where do they fall to you, just like Caitlin said, because Kelsey is always going to go within 5 picks of where he just went. Mark Andrews actually jumped Kelsey as my tight end 1 this year. And then you have the upside of Kits, I don't know what to call it with Kittle, the risk of Kittle, the risk reward of Kittle. And so you just don't quite know what you're going to get out of these tight ends. I'm not a big Hockenson guy. And then Waller has the question marks with Adam. So I knew I wanted to get a tight end there. It would have been Andrews or Kittle as long as they were there, or even Pitts. But it's running backs all day long for me.
I mean, Kittle's a dog.
Yeah.
When it comes to the position.
I mean, when he plays,
he's a dog. He's a big old dog. Question to both of you. Now, fantasy drafts are, different for everybody when it comes to, I would say, the middle of the pack. When you guys get into the middle rounds of a standard league, obviously we're all drafting for depth. Have you seen, I'm going to ask this to you, Caitlin. Have you seen any kind of off the wall picks in your drafts when it comes to the middle rounds? Have you seen defenses fly off the board, which it's happened before? I've seen it done. I've seen kickers off the board. I've seen guys that ride the bench most of the year fly off in the middle of the board because some guys are taking risks and saying, hey, this player might be a standout player this year. Have you seen what is your draft strategy in the middle rounds, Caitlin?
So middle, I just still, grab people that I think are going to play. I grab people that I think are going to be, very much a part of the mix throughout the year. Obviously, when you get towards, your end, your 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you start seeing people random ass grabs, rookies. So I'm actually in a keeper league.
Okay.
So, towards the end, you see a lot of people grab rookies. His rookie year, I actually took Joe Burrow. So he is my keeper.
Very nice.
So, you just don't know. So it all just kind of depends on, again, like I said before, it depends on the route that you want your team to go. It also depends on, who is picking people off the board, who is gone, who's still available. If you have people that you think could, that are rookies that think that they could get some quality playing time, why not? Why not just grab them and see what the hell happens? I mean, all you can do, you can always trade them if you want to, or, they may turn around and be the best thing that you ever grabbed. So you really just, it all just kind of depends.
Someone in the chat asked about Joe Burrow being picked over Lamar Jackson. And I know you picked Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson. Is it because you are kind of a homer and Burrow's your guy in your keeper league, or scouting wise, you think Burrow is the man over Lamar Jackson?
I think, my personal opinion, Joe Burrow went to the Super Bowl last year. So
it's almost like, Lamar, what have you done for me lately?
I was going to say there's that. And then you have the fact that what's the biggest knock on Joe Burrow? The shoddy offensive line, which they have fixed. And so you can't really look at last year as a ceiling for Joe Burrow. I think this year you could literally see better numbers. And that's why guys like Jamar Chase in the first round, T. Higgins, I believe, went in the second, if not the third. And I mean, even to an extent, and he's going to get slept on like crazy in this draft, Tyler Boyd, because he's looked at as more of a PPR guy. But I think there's value there too, because Burrow's just going to be slinging that ball all over the place.
Exactly.
Caitlin, coming into this year's draft, are there any players that really stick out to you the most that are going to have a high ceiling, or do you see any that were superstars last year that could maybe fall off a little bit going into this year? Because we've had so many transactions between teams. Like star players are going to different teams. They're going to be in different systems with different QBs. Are there any players that stick out to you the most that what like a Tyreek Hill or the Devontae Adams that are now number ones in different teams? Do you see maybe players like that taking a little bit of a dip in their fantasy numbers?
So I try not to, because it all just depends on, you could come from one team and it's, one go to another team and it's a completely different thing. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady was very successful in New England, and then all of a sudden he turned around and not to be a homer to you, Evan, but
I mean that says it all, right?
I was gonna say, Evan said, "Yeah, let's look at Tom Brady."
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, but no,
Right there.
seriously,
Right
like it all just kind of depends on. You don't know. You don't know if they're going to be a bust. You don't know if they're going to do great. It all just kind of depends. I don't feel like you can make that decision until you start seeing them practice, until you start seeing them rep-wise within the team. Obviously the chemistry, you have to have chemistry or it's not going to work out, but you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's happening behind the closed doors in the locker room.
Okay. I like that answer. That's a great answer. Ryan, we should maybe get her on the club fantasy team.
I love it. Caitlin, you are on the clock. I don't want you to miss your pick.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
You have 15 seconds. No, don't apologize. It's me trying to save you. I'll say something sooner next time.
Ryan, I'm going to ask you about now. Nate's obviously a auto
draft this week
because he did pick Miles Sanders. Now, obviously, Miles Sanders probably wouldn't go this high at all. So I'm going to get off that subject because I just realized he's an auto pick. So
actually, I want to talk about that because I don't understand the massive. Apparently, I'm just defending people this week. I don't understand the massive hate for Miles Sanders. Kenneth Gainwell didn't do all that much last year. You can't imagine they're going to keep feeding Boston Scott. Obviously, the Miles Sanders not scoring any touchdowns narrative is what's killing him, especially in a standard league. This is a weird team that the auto draft has built here, but I want to point out it is 3 wide receivers, 2 flex starters. So of these 5 wide receivers, one being DeAndre Hopkins, who is suspended for 6 games. He's going to be able to start those first 4 every single week. And then you have Taylor and Sanders. And obviously this is an auto draft, but I just want to talk about this kind of strategy. I don't have an issue with this, with these great starting running backs falling. And if you don't want to look at Miles Sanders, go back 4 picks and look at Caitlin getting Damian Harris at the 6'9". Damian Harris scored 18 touchdowns last year. He is a perfect standard running back, especially if you can land him as an RB2. And Caitlin got him as a friggin' RB3. Like that's a godsend in standard. Exactly. So loading up on wide receivers, a position that is deep where you can start 4 of them. I would typically say kind of do what the computer did here. Draft as many as you can start +1 sort of thing.
Yeah, man, he's got a murderer's row of wide receivers. A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin. I mean, obviously Godwin's going to be out a little bit because of injuries. And then
I was going to say, and then they just came out. They're almost flirting with using the PUP list on Chris Godwin already, which as a Chris Godwin, I don't even want to call myself a truther, but I adore Chris Godwin. I love Mike Evans too. It breaks my heart to know that he's probably not viable for the first 6 games of the season.
Yeah, I think they came out. Jason Light and Bruce Arians came out. Not Bruce Arians, I'm sorry. But Jason Light and Todd Bowles did come out, I think, a week and a half ago saying there is no timetable for him to come back in. So he's probably going to be put on the PUP list. So we'll see.
I want to point out our buddy Joe got sniped on that Harris pick. So great pick by Caitlin there.
Good pick. Good for you. Caitlin, do you have any crazy draft stories that you can maybe share in your past drafts, or were those kind of untouchable?
No, nothing crazy, just watching people as they, get drunk, because we do.
I was just going to say, watching people do cement shots.
Random shit, like, pick a. So if you're not there, so if you have to be on location, if you are not there, then you either have to call in or we will do the best available for you, with an asterisk on that best available. And if a defense or a kicker or anyone who is best available is on the best available list, that is who you end up with.
That reminds me of I think an episode of the league where I think Ruxin got 3 defenses and 2 kickers first off because he wasn't there. That's kind of funny.
By the way, so I've always been referred to as the blonde Jenny.
Okay. All right. And Jenny was a fantastic player in fantasy too.
Yeah. So
well, 2 championships in 5 years. You're damn right. You're the blonde Jenny.
Yeah, she's the blonde Jenny. Yeah.
So that's always my favorite show. I'm very sad that they don't have it anymore, and I'm very sad that Kevin has a lying background.
Oh yeah, yes. Steve Razzazzini and his questionable comments on the Howard Stern show about 9/11. Yes.
Sometimes it's best if you just don't hear what people you like have to say.
Don't talk about it. Like, come on.
All right, so we're going into almost the middle of the draft. How many rounds are we going today, Ryan?
I had it set up, I believe, at 14,
14,
so it's a little
okay.
bit shorter today.
Okay,
Nope,
so
I set it up as 15. I should have left it at 14, but
So we're kind of like in the middle, almost till the end part. Now, of
Yep.
course, position players are still going off the board. Caitlin, are you a person that just kind of looks at the defenses and kickers, obviously, at the last 2 rounds? Because most people do. I mean, if I'm in a league where it's defenses and kickers, I'm going the last 2 rounds when it comes to those types of things. Are you that type of person as well that, my last 2 picks, hey, I'm going to do a defense and a kicker, or I'm going to draft my whole team and then wait and pick up a defense and a kicker after the draft is over?
So I always pick, probably say the last 2 to 3 rounds. But it depends on whenever they start falling. So, if people start picking, like I already have a defense in mind for who.
Ooh.
Okay.
So I might pull the trigger early and grab them. I may wait a couple more rounds.
Say, don't do it too early.
Yeah,
I don't want to yell at you the first day I met you.
I'm the type of person when it goes into a league where there's a kicker in a defense, I will draft my full team and then wait and pick up a defense after, because I look at matchups. I'm one of those people that will do the matchup thing during the year. Obviously, it sometimes will bite you in the ass when it comes to those types of weeks, but you still leave that spot open for a player if you're going to be doing that type of, hey, I'm just going to pick up this defense with this matchup this week because it looks so good.
I run on matchups, but I also love to grab someone and then, I change them out.
Yep.
So, I like to have one just in case. And then I move them week to week.
Okay.
You can't see it, but there's a tear coming down my eye. I'm so proud of both of you. Evan, you literally word for word, and we have never talked about this in the 10 shows we've done together. I write articles literally telling people to do what you just described. Do not draft a kicker. Do not draft a defense. I'm putting together another article that's talking about that for football guys. You're going to play matchups. You're never going to not have a kicker or a defense that you can start with a good enough matchup. Last year, the statistics on kickers, defenses, and tight ends who were below 10% rostered, who had top 12 weeks, was absolutely ridiculous. They are out there to be found. I'm fine with what Caitlin said. Grab someone you like, especially if there's someone who you favor, who you think is falling. You'll see that every now and then. I'm not going to name teams yet because I don't want to ruin what she has going on. But if you have someone you want to grab, by all means, grab them later, as late as you can possibly get them within reason. Pay attention to ADP. But if you can avoid it, by all means, avoid it. I've done this research. ESPN is the only league that requires you to start to draft a kicker and a defense. They require you to fill your roster unless your league has its own settings.
Right, which is a bunch of malarkey too. I hate ESPN when it. But I learned I kind of learned throughout my fantasy football playing career is, obviously when I first started out, you got to pick a defense or kicker. But then I soon realized that the strategy of if you're going to be one of those top teams in the league and try to make the playoffs, defenses and kickers, they're kind of like a run of the mill kind of deal, because especially when it comes to defenses. I mean, defenses, you can have that pre-draft notion that, hey, like especially maybe I think it was last year or the year before last, where Washington's defense was going to be the best, one of the best in the league, and then it turned out Washington defense turned out to be one of the worst in the league because of all the injuries that happened to them. And that way, if you're one of those types of people that looks at the matchups, you can just go week by week, and you can even pick up, Detroit's defense or Atlanta's defense, teams that have like a weak defense, but if they're going up against a favorable matchup, you can take a chance on that, and it might work out for you. With a few extra points to beat your opponent that week. Same thing kind of goes with kickers as well. I mean, kickers, you have maybe a couple kickers that you can maybe rely on to give you, maybe double-digit points per week. I mean, the Justin Tuckers of the world, the Harrison Bucklers of the world. But other than that, you don't really have to rely on picking a kicker right off the bat. You can just look at the matchup this week, and if you want to fill that extra roster spot in your draft, you can by not picking those defenses or kickers. And it's just it'll help you. Trust me, it will help you in the long run if you do it by matchups.
Excellently explained. One thing I want to add to that is,
please do.
If you're not going to draft a defense or a kicker, don't think of the guys in your last 5 picks as the guys you're going to trade away.
Right.
Nobody wants those guys. They skip them for 10 rounds. You need to get guys in those last 5 picks that you want on your team It's the guys in the rounds 5 through 10 who become your trade bait. And what you're looking for is 2-for-1 trades. You are looking for guys who went in the middle rounds where you can trade the guy who you took with your 6th round pick and the guy you took with your 8th round pick to get someone drafted with their 3rd or 4th round pick. So you're essentially taking 2 lower guys for a guy you should have never had a chance to get on your roster. And that's where you have to have the comfortability with keeping the guys who you saw later on your roster. That's where you have to approach that differently, because if you're going out offering your 13th round pick and your 14th round pick for someone's 6th or 7th, they're not going to accept that trade.
And Caitlin, I wanted to ask you, a great pick with Tom Brady, by the way.
Wonderful pick.
In the 9th round, by the way. I think a lot of people are still just undervaluing Tom Brady for some odd reason, because they think a 44-year-old quarterback can perform at the highest level of the game, but he still comes out and throws 5,000 yards and should be obviously in the MVP talk every single year that he's playing. Caitlin, as a person that is 2-time champ. The trash talk must be great in your league when it comes to you and the guys that are in your league. I mean, the 2-time champ. And do you guys have a trophy? Do you guys do a ring or a belt for the championship?
I have my fantasy football rings over here. So but we have here, I'll show you. So this is actually my boyfriend's office, but we have 2 different bookcases.
Nice. Okay.
Of our sports stuff. And then over here, he's a really big Widespread Panic fan. So there's a bunch of Widespread Panic stuff, and we're just moved in, so he's got a bunch of stuff hanging. But my fantasy football ring is actually right here. So let me see if I can get my camera. I wish I could turn this. Can I turn this?
Oh.
I think she turned off her camera.
She'll be back with us. I'm guessing she might have accidentally closed the app. Oh, she's back.
It's quite all right. It's okay.
Okay. So I have my ring. So we do a ring that goes to each individual person. And then we have a trophy that stays at the bar that we draft out of.
See, I love that you guys have a home base for your league. This is one of my favorite things that we are discovering from this show, because Evan asked me a few weeks ago. I've actually never really done a destination draft. We did one at B-Dubs. We've always been in friends' basements and things like that. I love that you have this bar that is your home base. That's the home of your league. It's something I've never really even considered before. But how cool would that be that not only are you tied to these 11 other people, but you're also tied to this place? And I think that's damn cool.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to be able to, go there and we chit chat. We're all friends with each other. So most of us are bartenders or former bartenders that have either worked there or work at other places now, or don't work in the bar at all anymore, like me. But we have been a part of the restaurant, the bar that it's called Castleberry Ale House. It's in Cumming, Georgia. Thanks. You're welcome, Aaron, for the plug. But yeah, no, we go there on a Sunday. We start drafting at 12. We're normally there for a few hours, but our trophy stays there. And then if you are the loser of the two leagues, we actually have a shirt that says, I suck at fantasy football.
Yes.
You have to take the photo, and then you're on the wall for the entirety of the year.
Nice. I like that. Just about to ask you about Sacco punishments, but that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. So we do that. Take the photo, put it on the wall for the rest of the year. And then we also have a license plate that goes on the front of your car that says I suck at fantasy football, and it's hot pink and whatever. So I actually got away. I didn't have to do
I was just going to say.
So whenever I lost my car that I had at the time, I did not have the front license plate, little holes in the front of the car. And I was not about to drill them. So that was also during COVID time. So we, obviously we weren't really getting out and about. And I also work remotely from home. So
so nobody would have saw it anyway.
Never happened. It never happened.
I absolutely love that.
Picking Gronk with the next pick after Brady. Okay, now that Gronk is a big question mark right now with Tampa Bay, if he's going to play or not. Obviously, hopefully, as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, hopefully he plays. So yeah, we're going into our. So I good fantasy story about us. So the owner of Rafferty's, Carl, whoever the commissioner of the league is, which is usually me, and I love hate being a commissioner because, of course you have the responsibility of running the leagues, but you also have to hear the damn complaints from everybody in the league when it comes to trades. Caitlin, are you a big proponent on trades? Do you make a lot of trades during the year, or are you kind of one of those people that has, this is my lineup, I'm set with this, I'm going to ride or die with this lineup throughout the year? Or, are you the type of person that says, hey, I need to make a trade right now? How are you? What's your stance on that type of situation?
So I normally I normally do waiver wire. I don't normally trade, just because, my thought process on trading and my value on my trades could be completely different than somebody else's value. So I'm a waiver wire person rather than trades.
Okay. I like that, waiver wire heavy. Ryan, what are you? I mean, we haven't really done a dive into trades during the years for fantasy. Are you a big trader guy, or are you more like the waiver wire pickup person?
All the time. I live off the waiver wire. I actually write waiver wire articles, so I have to be very active on the waiver, but I look at waiver wire. The first thing I do, I've actually talked about this before. I go and look. Sleeper is great about this. It shows you who else put in bids for your guy. I go and try to trade them, the guy they were trying to bid for and didn't win, and just try to put together. I'm 2 for 1. If I can send you 2 pieces that I don't want for a piece from your team I do want, that is the perfect trade-off for me, and that's exactly what I'm looking to do. And so that's the kind of stuff I'll do. But I typically in almost all my leagues send out trade offers constantly. You brought up the don't draft kickers and defense. I'm sending trade offers the day of the draft. Like, there's someone on your team. I pay attention to who says things at the draft about they're pissed that I got a guy that they wanted, and I will immediately offer trades. I try not to have a huge tie to any of these players, but except my keepers. Just like Caitlin, I fall in love with my keepers. And so, like, I'm in a 14-team league, so before I just get destroyed for this, I'm keeping Patrick Mahomes. I'm keeping a quarterback after I destroy everyone for taking quarterbacks early. But the bigger the league, the more valuable quarterbacks are, plain and simple. So, like, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Jonathan Taylor, I won't even entertain trades for them. When people are like, what's it going to take for me to get Jonathan Taylor? I'm like, for me to leave the league. That's what it's going to take for you to get Jonathan Taylor. So
I'm a little bit of both. I love living on the waiver wire. I mean, you have to watch those alerts and updates during the week, and especially to the guys that are kind of flying under the radar that are starting to heat up, which, players like that happen. I mean, AJ Brown was like that a couple of years ago, where he was just a nobody. Then all of a sudden he exploded into the league. So, I was fortunate enough to pick AJ Brown off the waivers and just ride him into the playoffs. I'm also a big proponent on trades. Especially like as soon as the draft ends, I'm taking a snapshot of the whole draft board, and I'm seeing, okay, who could I maybe make a potential offer to for a trade? Because Ryan, you hit the nail right on the head. You got to listen during the draft about guys that are trying to pick this certain player, and if they don't get him, like, hey, maybe I'll make a trade with this guy because he coveted this guy, and that other person picked him. So you really got to have to, alcohol aside, if you're at a destination draft, you really got to have to pay attention. That's why sometimes I fake out people and I'll drink water when I tell them it's vodka in my cup.
I love that.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to win the league. But I've also been, I've done grimy trades where it's been questionable when trading with another person because I think this happened last year. I was drafting in the delivery room of me, my wife. We're about to have our son, and I did a fantasy draft before my wife had my son, and
I love it.
I was like, look, we didn't know he was going to be born on that day, and I had a draft that day, and my wife's like, well, just bring your laptop to the hospital and do a draft then, which I did. And then
awesome.
after the draft was done, I started to put out some trades and put out some feelers. So you really have to pay attention to those whispers, especially in the chats when it comes to trade offers. So
going to be in the delivery room when I'm pregnant, my firstborn. If it is anywhere near draft time, I'm going to have my laptop and I'm going to be pushing.
My what?
And then I'm going to be fucking pissed off because I'm like, this is my draft.
Yep. My wife, to her ultrasound, wore her favorite Peyton Manning jersey to project masculinity to make sure we had a boy instead of a girl. So.
Very nice.
Love that.
I think by the time my wife was about to give birth, I think we were done. And we were done. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're ready to go. I'm like, perfect timing. Yes. And it was great. So, see, Joe is saying, I'll trade you 2 for 1.
Joe stole rookie wide receivers from me. This draft has went very weird, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But this draft has went very, very strange. So Joe took Sky Moore before I had a chance to just keep tacking on rookie wide receivers. And Caitlin got me on Chris Olave as well. Olave I actually wanted. Sky Moore, I'm actually not nearly as big on Sky Moore. I actually McCole Hardman around later. So, but these rookie, I didn't expect for any draft I've ever been in to fall like this. But my goodness, has it been a very, very strange draft.
Breece Hall went pretty early. I think he went in like the first, maybe the second round, I think.
Yeah, it was second or third round, and then even I think that same team got Ken Walker as well, not too far after that.
Now, Caitlin, you're from Georgia. Are you also an Atlanta Falcons fan? Unfortunately.
So what's funny about that question is I am not. I'm probably about to be. A lot of people are going to be upset with me. I'm not really a huge NFL fan.
Interesting.
So you're more college heavy.
I'm college all the way.
Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Nothing.
No.
You know what? That kind of gives you a leg up, especially in fantasy, because
absolutely
you're watching more of the college players that are going to go into the draft the next year. That way, you have a better idea of these young guys that are going in. Which ones could you maybe target, especially in the keeper leagues, especially in those coming up. So, okay, great. So let's kind of go into our final 2 rounds, which are probably reserved for kickers and defenses.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of weird bench guys, and then anybody who paid attention to the settings should start drafting kickers and defenses.
So, Caitlin, kind of walk me through your draft board, kind of what your strategy was. Were you forced to change anything during the draft if some of the guys that you wanted to pick were picked?
So I want Mike Evans, obviously. That was kind of my George Kittle move, but I'm not mad about it at all. I know sometimes George Kittle is a risk, but I definitely think that it's a risk board. So if he works out, then you're going to have a great season. And then honestly, I grabbed Damian Harris, Lockett, Olave. I'm excited for Olave. And I'm also excited down in 12, I grabbed Zamir White.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that as well.
Okay.
I actually want to throw out something for Zamir White. I was having a great conversation with Zach Berger, one of our writers. Zamir White is a guy, because I know, Caitlin, you said your main league is a keeper league. Zamir White is a guy to pay attention to in a keeper league where round values matter. So let's say you can keep him for a round +1 from where you drafted him last year. Zamir White this year is a 12th round pick with little to no 2022 value. Next year, he is the only Raiders running back with a contract and is very likely the starting running back for the Raiders if all goes well and he proves himself. Now you have a starting NFL running back for a 12th or 11th round pick, depending on what your keeper rules are.
Awesome.
So you cannot keep anybody from the first 2 rounds. And then from 3 all the way down, it's a 2. So it's a +2. So if you grabbed him in the 12th round, he would be my 10th round keeper for the following year.
Okay.
For a starting NFL running back, arguably. That's the kind of draft strategy. That's the kind of, and I know you said you don't prep, but that's the kind of stuff that I love that you can just find in a fantasy draft. And I'm not trying to continually plug my own articles, but that's part of the thing I'm going to talk about in this next article is making the most out of these bottom 5 picks, because I feel like you guys brought it up. People are drunk. People are not paying attention. If you're not that guy, and I'm not saying don't drink, have fun at your draft, but if you're not that guy, you can maximize these top 5 picks to a ridiculous amount of success.
Are there any picks between the both of you that kind of really stuck out to you the most throughout the whole draft? Any picks that kind of stood out that maybe have gotten drafted early or drafted too late? Any guys that Kayla, I got to say, the one that sticks out to me most is the Damian Harris pick. That was a great snag.
Amazing pick.
In the 6th round. That was a great one. That was a steal. And
honestly, the pick right before that, Brandon Cooks in a standard, that's where he lives. That's such a good pick to land that late in this entire process. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is super interesting. Maybe not so much in standard, but we don't know what the Chiefs are thinking. They got Ronald Jones. Let's not forget, nobody liked Ronald Jones a year ago, and now all of a sudden he's in Kansas City, and it's CEH is done. And I just don't know that maybe we're burying him a little bit too early. So,
Ryan, let's go into your favorite segment of the draft. It's the oops of the draft.
It is, and it's going to be 1,000% surrounded about the quarterbacks that I touched on earlier. And one of the guys, I don't remember who it was, either Austin or Joel, talked about this. Let's start with quarterback early, and there's going to be a lot of quarterback talk here. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the second round when Justin Herbert goes a full 2 rounds later, almost 3 rounds later than Josh Allen. It just shows why you should not be taking quarterbacks early at all. It's just not the way you should be drafting, because if you can wait 2 rounds and stack up your running backs and wide receivers. Caitlin, while I don't agree with taking 2 quarterbacks in the top 9, and that's something else that's going to come out here in a second because someone else did it even worse than you, I want to point out Tom Brady. You guys have already hit on it. Tom Brady is the reason why you shouldn't be taking a damn quarterback in almost the first 7 rounds of your draft. If I can get Tom Brady in the 9th, I don't care about the quarterbacks who went before him. He was the damn QB3 last year. Yes, he lost Chris Godwin, but they added Russell Gage, who was a damn good slot wide receiver. Brashad Perriman is a great deep threat. You're hoping Gronk comes back. Leonard Fournette is back. I want Tom Brady, and if I can get him there, I'm not going to give you such a hard time. I typically kill people for 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends. You did the right thing with 2 tight ends. Gronk, an immense value, and Kittle is an injury risk. You back-ended your investment. That's perfect. The quarterback thing, I wouldn't have done it, but someone did it way worse than you. They were actually already giving this guy, Mosh on Josh, a hard time in the draft chat. Lamar Jackson, and then 2 rounds later, Jalen Hurts. I don't understand that whatsoever. That is not the strategy you should go in, especially when you consider at this point he did not even have his 3rd wide receiver yet. He kind of saved himself with Hunter Renfrow and James Cook later on, but overall, that is not a great draft strategy. I really think what's going to take people from competing for a championship to winning a championship is understanding where to get quarterback in your draft, and please stack up those other positions. Just pay attention to these mocks and how much later you can get QBs. So my oops of the draft is just everybody taking 2 QBs or any QBs way too damn early.
Well, that is it for us. The class is now ended for our draft today. We'd like to thank Caitlin for coming on the show. Caitlin, you were great. Thank you. Ryan, I think we need to have more non-fantasy analysts on the show.
I completely agree. And
Caitlin sets the bar pretty high, though.
So. I agree, and I know my friend's not going to stand up to it whatsoever. He's going to crash and burn. No, I was telling Caitlin this story, and I like telling people some behind-the-scenes stuff, and I know we're going to jump off here quickly, but Evan and I independently in the same week had the same idea that we needed to have non-fantasy published analysts on the show for this mock draft show where we're here to help you guys get better. Mock drafting is all about practice. There is no right, there is no wrong, but I'm going to look at what you did and I'm going to tell you things that I wouldn't have done that way. Maybe you don't care how I would have done things. Maybe you've been in a league with me and beat me, but hearing it from other people from all over the place, like Caitlin, you're going to hear a ton of different strategies. And it was such a great idea. And you did such a great job, Caitlin, just explaining it doesn't need to be weeks of preparation. Sometimes it's as much as know the players, know who you like, know who you think is going to be good, and know when to get them. And I know you don't mock draft, but that is one of the best things about mock drafting is you get an idea of when they're going to go, because it's always get your guy season, but you got to know when you're going to get your guy.
I also think it helps like in an advantage, and I know we're running low on time, but I also think it has a huge advantage of being a college football fan as well.
True. I agree with that.
Like we said before, like you're going to get your guy, you're going to have your homers, you're going to have your
such a good point.
You're going to have, your defense guys. So like the Green Bay defense just took a bunch of dogs, like you're going to have defenses, and you're going to have a bunch of different teams that take your people. And so those are kind of going to be your teams that you cheer for. And those are going to be the players that you end up picking.
Awesome. Such a great point. And it's not an angle we've had on the show before. So thank you for saying that. It's so good.
And thank you, Caitlin. We'll get you out of here. I know you got to get out of here pretty quickly. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, and have me. This is awesome.
And good luck this year. Hopefully this will be championship number 3 for you and you'll get another ring.
I'll be rooting for you. That's for damn sure. And we'll have you on next year too. So.
All right. Well, class was in session. Thanks for coming on the show, Caitlin. Of course, this is Mock It Like It's Hot. We will see you next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we go, make sure this Wednesday starts the summer series on No Pun Intended called A Look Inside. Every episode, we will be reviewing the fantasy prospects of 3 teams. We begin with the Jaguars, the Lions, and the New York Football Jets. And as a bonus, we will have articles dropping this week to coincide with those teams, starting with a Travis Etienne piece later by yours truly, Ryan. Yes, Look at that mug right there.
That's right. It's ready to go. It'll be out later on today. So.
Of course, the show will be back next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Club Fantasy FFL on the YouTube page. Make sure to go there and subscribe to us. Austin Amendola, is it Amendola?
Amendola, yep.
Amendola, as he and Ryan do another mock draft together. We haven't decided what kind of draft.
We just did. Best ball draft, our first one of the season. So.
Best ball draft next week. So for myself and Ryan and Caitlin, thank you for coming on the show today. We will see you guys next week on the show.
Bye.
Thank you.